always wonder how much of the psychology I should be teaching behind my topic of healing anxious attachment with somatic work. And, psychologists are kind of taught not to teach their clients a bunch of mental theory because it kind of puts you in your head. But actually, the women that I attract and that come work with me love to know the theory. So you probably love to know the actual psychology behind how things work because you want to figure it out and you want to understand what that means for you. So, one of the most powerful tools I have ever learned in my practice is called parts work. This is also called internal family systems. And I'm going to explain what this is in detail, but basically it's a map that allows us to realize that even though we would love to think that we are just one person and we're in alignment with that, we're actually not. All of our psyches have been fragmented in different ways. And this is most spoke about when we say the inner child. And so when we are navigating romantic relationships and just being a human, sometimes there's these sides of us that come out that are not really how we want to operate. For example, it might just be extreme perfectionism. It might be childlike behaviors. It might be getting really defensive. There's these behaviors that we all have that we just wish that we didn't do that. Maybe it's a coping mechanism like, reaching for food or binging Netflix. Maybe it's a freeze response, right? And so what internal family systems allows us to do is to really explore these different parts of ourselves in a very humanizing way so that we can actually create harmony within ourselves, basically mentally, and so that all of our parts are acting in alignment with what we want to feel and how we want to show up. So the framework of internal family systems starts with the concept that there is the self. And the self is this unchanging current within all of us that we could define as being securely attached, being calm and regulated or knowing how to get there, being generally curious, generally compassionate, loving, but also self-loving. It's that part of you that does know your worth, that does know your power, that isn't afraid to take up space. So we all have that. And it might be underneath many different parts, many different layers. But it's the same in all of us. It's like this loving, compassionate core that we all have. Then we start to we have these different, so they have different names for different types of parts. One of the terms is the exiled parts. These are often really young parts of us that are sort of stuck, looping in an experience we had when we were quite young that was really painful. And because there is shame or embarrassment or sadness to process there, a feeling of being weak, our psyche kind of pushes that part of us away into what might feel like a cave or a room, feeling very alone, like you obviously can't handle yourself and or we cannot handle feeling this shame or this sadness, so you're just going to go over there and me, the new fragment of the psyche, will handle it instead. Which brings me to the second type of parts, which are managers. And so managers are these parts of our psyche that handle things. They manage. So a manager might be our perfectionism, like I said before, our people pleaser. The manager is the part of you that makes sure you do everything right or makes sure everyone is happy, makes sure things are managed. Managers tend to be planners, they tend to work overtime, they tend to be super competent. Then we have our protectors or our firefighters, as they call it in internal family systems. And the protectors are more reactive. They show up when an exiled, tender part of ourself, because the exile is kind of holding our deepest wounds. When that part gets triggered, when it gets poked or set off in any way, a firefighter comes online, a protector comes online to handle that. And so they might handle it with rage, they might handle it with numbing, they might handle it with dissociation, like scrolling or food or substances, right? That's like our it's like a line of defense. All these terms make perfect sense. Defense, protector, firefighter, you feel this like intense reactive energy. So now you are just one beautiful human walking around in your life thinking that you are just you. Meanwhile, you have exiled parts that have emotions to feel. You have managers that are trying to probably grip and control and make sure everything's going to be okay. And then you have the protectors that sometimes catch you off guard and make us ask, why am I feeling so crazy? Why am I feeling so reactive? Why am I scrolling in bed for 2 hours on TikTok when I actually know I should be doing something different? what can happen there is there's actually a protector part that has dissociated and become numb, and then a manager that's super annoyed at the protector. So that's when we feel this internal conflict of, I know I should be doing something, I'm being lazy, I'm not being productive, sort of like this, what sounds like a manager vibe and voice. And then there's the part that is trying to protect something else by going into the dissociative behavior or the defensive behavior, or however it shows up for you, freezing, fawning, it's always probably going to correlate with one of our default survival responses of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so when we work with these different parts, because maybe just as I'm saying them, you're like, oh man, I totally have a part like that, or I can totally see some of my parts here. What we start to do is we need to explore them subconsciously, because as soon as we try and explore them mentally, then chances are we are actually observing them through the mind of the manager itself, or through the protector herself. And so when we can drop into our body, which means accessing these parts through a felt sense within you, which could be, let's say you feel this urgency to constantly be productive. You're probably feeling that in your chest. And when we explore that feeling in the chest, we get to know the manager that's in there. And these different parts of us, even the exiled parts, the manager, the protector, they generally have roles. They have like a job that they think they should be doing and how they think they should be doing it. And so we want to have these conversations with them subconsciously to help create harmony. What we are never trying to do in parts work is make a part wrong or bad, because what happens when we make a part wrong or bad is it just wants to keep doing its thing even more, and sometimes even more loudly. So if we see our own inner critic as a part and we think, I would love if my inner critic just did not exist at all, and I try and ignore them and I want them to go away. Imagine if that inner critic was human and it wanted to get your attention and it wanted to protect you, and you were trying to ignore it. It would get louder. If you were trying to make it go away, it would probably do something to try and get your attention again. So in the theory of internal family systems, we always hold the frame of all parts are welcome. And in that thread of all parts being welcome, we actually have to find within ourselves a way to be compassionate and understanding to all of these parts. That's generally what allows them to switch from being in their, let's call it the shadow expression that maybe isn't for your highest good, into their gifts. Because even though they might be causing havoc in different ways, there's probably something there that actually has helped you and actually has supported you at one point in your life. So I hope this video was supportive to teach you a new psychological framework behind some of the behaviors that we have in some of our survival responses. In the next video, we're going to talk about some of these specific protector archetypes in more detail, like how does the perfectionist really show up in the mind and the body. And we'll also talk about some other archetypal protectors like the lone wolf and the ice queen and other ones that you will understand once you hear them, but we're going to break down how they show up in the body and the subconscious. And if you love this topic and you want to explore your parts further with me personally, then in June on the 7th, I'm hosting a workshop called Protective Patterns, and we're going to work on these different sort of shapes and defenses we take that actually sabotage us. And we're going to do it subconsciously and somatically. So if you love this topic and you haven't experienced subconscious or somatic healing, or you have and you know that it's great because it really, really works, then I would love to see you inside Becoming Her in June. There's going to be a link in the show notes to join, and once you join, you're in for the whole month. So you get access to my entire library of somatic practices for healing anxious attachment, many other teachings, live Q&As with me, and the workshop, and then you can stay for 1 month or you can stay for longer. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next video.